It is Locked On Jazz for March 23rd. Your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers. I'm all flustered because you probably saw a 3-second feed that snuck out with my son running by without a shirt on. Nothing too big, but just kind of funny. All right, let's get to the show today. All the things we knew at the beginning of the year are still true today, and maybe even more so. The Boston Celtics are the best team in the NBA and quite a challenge, and the Golden State Warriors have busted the door open so that the third seed is available for you. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is, in fact, Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can subscribe and have the bell to notify you. Okay, that was funny. I don't know how many of you got that. My son is here in Boston. I've had a wonderful time with him. I got to see him again. My heart is full again. It's been broken as he left for college. And he's here, and we did the start of the show. We thought we were fine, and we didn't realize that mirror meant that you could see him across the way. It was nothing too outrageous other than, I could probably increase my ratings with a 19-year-old without his shirt on. But that wasn't really what we were looking for. So anyway, kind of a funny little start to the show today. You know what's funny is I was out getting coffee this morning, and I was walking back, and the one thought I keep kind of having is, the Brooklyn Nets don't have Kyrie Irving, they don't have Ben Simmons, and they don't have Joe Harris, and then Kevin Durant kicks our butt, and yet then we're walking around talking about, well, we don't have Bojan. Yeah. And there is something that's different about teams that have one of those guys. So, as we're playing the Clippers the other night, they're on the extreme end, and they're now 500, in which, we're missing Donovan and Bojan making a big deal of it, and Ty Lue's looking at us like, yeah, right, I don't have Kawhi Leonard, and I don't have Paul George. But, and the Lakers are looking at you like, hey, I don't have Anthony Davis. And when you're missing one of those guys, I certainly it's that's a little bit different. For the Jazz, though, what I think is interesting is the Jazz don't have, I don't know where you want to rank Donovan. I don't want to get into make some controversial comment that I don't mean to make about where you rank Donovan and players in the NBA. I mean, he's certainly an all-star, and I don't think he'll make all-NBA this year. Maybe he will. I haven't looked at it. I haven't listened to Zach's podcast or anyone else's podcast about all-NBA, but maybe I just feels like there's just a plethora of players. Maybe Donovan makes third-team all-NBA. I don't know if Rudy makes all-NBA this year. I think Karl-Anthony Towns takes a real run at that instead of Rudy. And so there's a chance that we have this team that's trying to do all these things without a all-NBA player. And I mean, and that's a little ridiculous because both Donovan and Rudy are all NBA caliber, right? So, but it just shows you the depth of the league. I'm not trying to make a controversial comment there. My point on this, I'll get to it, is what we talked about at the very, very beginning of the year, that we had to have kind of perfect balance and had to have it kind of perfectly come together for us, and everything has to be churning at the right time, is really still very, very true. And early in the year when Joe wasn't great, then Jordan's inefficiency suddenly looked, a much bigger deal. And so when we don't have Bojan, I do think it impacts us because of who we are and that we don't have that guy on top more than it does some other teams, right? So I think, when you have a Kevin Durant, or if the Clippers still had Kawhi Leonard, or when you have LeBron, though it's not great, when you have one of those guys and you're missing somebody else, when you're missing Jamal Murray and Michael Porter and you have Nikola Jokic, I think you still kind of churn around, right? Your possessions are still getting to that guy. That guy's gravity is still dictating the game. That's still impacting everything. We don't have that in the same way. And so when we're not perfectly whole, I do think it makes a bigger deal to us than some other teams. And that was kind of my thought this morning as I was out on my morning walk through Boston. Found a really cool cafe called Pressed. And in how I kind of felt about, well, why is it that we're missing a guy and then we, stumble a little bit. Phoenix, frankly, I just give them great credit. They're just loaded, for them to survive without Chris Paul. But Devin Booker is showing some great stuff. And then DeAndre Ayton's super good. But, maybe that's faulty, and maybe we should be able to handle these things a little better. It is worth noting for all of the angst that I feel that if you look at the records in the NBA since February 1st, we're 15-6. We've been alternating wins and losses here recently, and I think that makes it hard on people. But Boston's 18-3, and oh my gosh, do we have a task at hand today? And then Phoenix is 18-5, and it's amazing. And Minnesota is 17-6, and Memphis is 14-5. Those are the teams that are better than us since February 1st, since we got semi back to being right. January was a mess, right? And Boston turned the quarter on January 1. Boston was a team that was not playing well, and then they hit January 1, and they clicked in on January 1, and we'll talk about that coming up. The other two things I thought were interesting, or a few things that we talked about at the beginning of the year and started the season, and they're still true today, was our free agent signings. So my feeling on our free agent signing really was, as when the year started, was the fact that Hasaan Whiteside was going to have the biggest impact on the regular season, and he was the signing for the regular season, and he certainly has. Like the fact that we have another 7-footer that's on the floor for every night of the year and impacting games and giving us, against New York, gave us 48 minutes of center, and it couldn't have been more obvious what a big deal that was. Has absolutely been a massive, massive item for us in the regular season. The Rudy Gay signing, to me, was a postseason signing, and particularly because he was coming off a major heel surgery in which, he wasn't able to play, and we haven't seen him for extended stretches, and we've now seen, and we'll see if it lasts, and this is vital if it does, but we've now seen 2 or 3 of his best games in a row, and he's beginning to look a little different. He started the year, Gay played 24 straight games, then he played 1, then he was out for 2, then he played 2, then he played 1, then he played, I think, 7, then he was out for 6, and since then he's now come back to play 12 straight games. And in the last 3, what we've seen from Rudy Gay is 10 points, 6 rebounds, an assist, 67% shooting, and 50% from 3. And the rebounding is probably the most important part, and we've been good with him on the floor in 2 of the 3 games. That's Rudy Gay was a April signing. Like his impact is in April. So we've still got time for him. The other one that was obvious at the beginning of the year was whether or not we could keep Rudy Gobert impacting games. The scouting report, I felt this about us all year. The scouting report on us is, as abundantly clear as any team in the league. And so it's interesting. Rudy is impacting about 1 fewer shots a game inside 6 feet. And teams are shooting 51.5 against him. Last year, they were shooting 49% against him. Those are pretty close. Overall, last year, he impacted 8 shots at the rim. This year, it's 7. Overall, last year, he impacted 22 shots a game. This year, he's shooting 20, impacting 21. He's the 3rd best in the league. Robert Williams impacts the most. We'll get into that in a moment and how Boston uses him similarly and different to Rudy. He and Jared Allen and Robert Williams have the biggest impact on percentage as well. And inside 6 feet, it's Jared Allen and Jaren Jackson Jr. So what's interesting there on impacting shots that we'll get into is that Robert Williams is not only impacting shots at the rim. But it is worth noting that here we were again with a storyline that we had at the very, very beginning of the season is still true. And the final one that I thought was, kind of the storyline for our season, and it still turns to be true 72 games into the season, is that our best players are the ones that are most have to get better. And I think they both have. Donovan's a better player than he was a year ago. And impressively, Rudy Gobert, I think, is a better player than he was a year ago. And so I think both of them are more prepared for the playoffs than we've seen before. We'll see. I mean, the interesting one on us is there, and we'll talk about this more. There's a chance that we're going to be the team that has another gear in the playoffs that everyone else doesn't. Or that other, Denver's going pretty hard. Maybe our guys have kind of coasted through this regular season because of the fact that he, last year at this point we were 52-20 and didn't get a lot out of it. Pretty hard to go motivate yourself to go do that again. We'll see. By the way, one note, we've won more games against above 500 teams this year than we did all of last year at the same, we're 72 games in. Only 10 left the regular season. I'm kind of sad. It's been a weird season for us. I feel pretty, I don't look it, but I feel fresh in the sense of like going and continuing to go. And it is kind of a bummer that we're winding down. I don't want this to wind down. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Intercap Lending. That's my friend Steve Carter. He's our own personal loan officer at Intercap. He does amazing work, and it's a real pleasure to work with Intercap. Intercap came back to Utah and has just exploded. And, if you're a lending company, you explode for only one reason. You get deals done with great customer service, right? I mean, that's it. Steve Carter is at the core of that. There are others over at Intercap that are equally as good. I can't imagine that. Are also very good. How about that? But there's no one quite like our guy, Steve Carter. And you can call Steve at 385-800-8528. I've gone to him twice. Multiple Locked On people have gone to Steve Carter. My COO of Locked On has gone to him. We've just, a friend of mine who's a lender uses Intercap because they get deals done. So it is Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. For more information, visit intercaplending.com. By the way, they can help you if you're outside of Utah. So if you're looking to get something done before the rates go up again, or find out what your options are right now with the world changing the way it is, feel free to call Steve or email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com. And we'll get you hooked up with Steve Carter with a personal introduction. Today's show is also brought to you by Built Bar. All right. They might have just broken it. They broke the internet yesterday, actually. These got so popular, they broke their site yesterday. Brownie Batter Puffs. Brownie Batter Puffs. My son is with me. I gave him his first ever churro puff yesterday. He was like, wait, this is like marshmallow. It's like candy. I was like, yeah, that's the whole point. And it's somehow good for you. It's absolutely, truly amazing. It's built.com. Limited releases, brownie batter, ruby chocolate puffs, and then caramel almond delight regular is still available for you. Plus all the regular flavors. You can build your own box. Build your 12-bar mix box. You can build a Puffs mix box. I don't know that you can do that with the brownie batter. Brownie batters are 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, and just 7 grams of sugar. That's a little more than their usual. The sugar is usually 4, and the calories are usually 130. So I'm sure it'll be the most decadent, fabulous protein bar you've ever had. It's built.com. Promo code LOCKED15 gets you 15% off. So tonight's opponent, the Boston Celtics, were 16-18 on December 27th. They lose again to the LA Clippers on December 29th to go to 16-19. And then they beat the Phoenix Suns at home, 123-108. And then sneak by the Orlando Magic in overtime before losing 2 more straight on January to the Spurs and the Knicks. There's no sign that this thing's turning around. In fact, if you remember, the talk at that point is that Boston's going to break up Jalen Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. which, is kind of a stupid conversation when you have those two players. At the time, they were 20th in the league offensively. They were 24th in the league in shooting. They were 7th in the league defensively. They were fouling a decent amount. They were just really a mundane team at 17 and 19. And then if we go look at them from January 1 to today, it's crazy. They're 28 and 9. Their offense moves from 23rd to 8th, and their defense becomes number 1 in the NBA. And not by a little. Since January 1, they're 3 points better than the next closest defense in the NBA, which is Miami. They are 105.6. Miami's 108.6. So that 3-point differential gets you to the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are 10th. By the way, because of our weird January, we're 16th in the league since January 1. We can eliminate, we weren't very good in January, so we can eliminate that, and we'll look at Feb 1 in a second. They stop fouling. They become the best defensive team in the league against the shot. They're 6th best at forcing turnovers. Their defense is a complete juggernaut. They have been fortunate that teams have missed an inordinate amount of 3-point shots. But Boston, frankly, has been the one team that's held that consistently year in and year out. Their offense has gone from not being able to shoot at all to the 6th best effective field goal percentage. The 15th in turnovers, 13th in offensive rebounds, and 14th. The shooting's the amazing one. This is the gang that, frankly, couldn't shoot straight, that since then is the 6th best shooting team in the league. That's the question I have for Udoka today. Udoka, their head coach, is like, what took you from being the 20th ranked shooting team to the 6th, because they have the best half-court defense in the NBA. So the fact that they're putting the ball in the basket all the time is game-changing. This is going to be an immense challenge without Bogey. I mean, we showed you the screenshots last night. Our floor spacing is really poor without Bojan Bogdanovic. What we're going to see from them is interesting. I suspect, and this has been kind of their model, is that Al Horford will start the game guarding Rudy Gobert. Robert Williams will start the game probably guarding either Royce O'Neal or Juancho Hernan-Gomez, and then he plays a rover. But a bit differently than Rudy, what Robert Williams does is just impact shots all over the floor. So Rudy impacts 7 shots a game inside 6 feet. Robert Williams is not anywhere close to that. He's out impacting shots all over the floor, which really kind of changes the way he defends. But if you look at, all shots, overall, players' defensive contested shots, Robert Williams does come closer to the top. Gobert's number 2 in the league at about 21 a game, as we talked about earlier, and Williams kind of gets into that group of starting impacting shots. He's going to roam, playing almost a one-man zone, and this is really very similar to what the Jazz have done, but he only impacts 14 shots a game. Players shoot 7% less well against Robert Williams when he's the closest defender. Rudy Gobert is at 6.2. Jared Allen's at 6.5. So Robert Williams has the most impact of anyone in the league on shots when he's the closest defender. He just doesn't impact as many. And then when you try to get into, around the rim, it's not nearly as many. Gobert around the rim inside 6 feet, as we talked about, is, at 7 shots a game that he's impacting, and Williams is below 5. So and then the other aspect of the Celtics, though, I have to admit, watching their game against Denver the other night, in which they were up 23 at halftime in Denver in the middle of a road trip, which was pretty awe-inspiring. They didn't switch as much as I thought. They actually played Williams a lot as a drop big in that game. So it'll be interesting to see. When they do switch, though, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and Robert Williams, not a lot of weak defensive players. Horford, probably at this stage of his career, is that weak defensive player, and we exploited that pretty dramatically with him shifting off of our players and getting open looks. Mike Conley had 7 threes that game, went 7 for 7. Royce O'Neal hit some shots. I don't think Rudy missed a shot that game. We did exploit Al Horford's lack of mobility in that game pretty significantly, but I don't know that that's actually a model that we can live by again this game. And then Grant Williams plays, and you can't exploit him. So what the other trick that they have is they have 5 guys out on the floor that are 5 good switching defensive players, and they're super good at it. And you don't have, usually the problem with switching defenses is if you know they're going to switch, most teams have one defensive liability somewhere. And so what you do is you simply decide that you're going to find that guy, you bring him up to the ball, and you switch, Grayson Allen or whoever that is onto, nice of me just to choose Grayson Allen, that, singularly bad defensive player onto the ball, and you can get away with it. They don't have that. That's what makes this a little tricky. So as they start playing switch defensively, they're about as good as you can get in the NBA at this. In fact, they've switched the most picks of anyone in the league. They've switched about 100 more picks than there is on anyone in the league, and they are the best defending that, along with Phoenix. Phoenix and Boston are the 2 best switching defenses in the NBA. So when they start switching us tonight, which they'll do 30, 40% of the time, they're as good as anyone at it. So this is a really big offensive challenge for us. And then the thing to watch on the backside is, are they, because of our lack of shooting right now, are they switching at the top when Rudy rolls? Are they bringing a weak side guy over that then takes away Rudy's role? This is a big challenge. And Boston is rolling. Since, January 1, best record in the NBA. Since February 1, really outstanding. Also, by the way, I thought it was worth, kind of on the same one of where we were a moment ago. Let me see if I can find this. I was going to pull it up, but now I can't find it. So maybe we're not going to pull it up. I must have accidentally closed. No, I did not close a window. Since February 1, we are 16. We are the 4th best offense and the 5th best defense in the NBA. Boston is the 6th best offense and the number 1 defense in the NBA. And since February 1, their defense is not as dominating, because Miami's equally as dominating. But Boston to Phoenix, who's 3rd, is a huge gap. Miami's just equally as good defensively. The East is going to be a bloodbath in the playoffs this year. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. By the way, Warriors lost their last 2. We'll talk about the impact of that coming up. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the best, most fun DFS daily fantasy game out there for you. You pick 2 to 5 players, an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times an entry. It's just you versus the projected number. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. Prize Picks is safe and otherwise fast withdrawals. Use the award-winning app on both Apple and the Google Play Store. Prize Picks offers a variety of options, so you can pick Jason Tatum's this and something from college basketball as well. For a limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer offer for all the users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point. But you must use the code NBA. That's right. Exclusive offer available to only Locked On listeners. Sign up today and use the code NBA, $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point. It's Prize Picks. It's your best daily fantasy made easy. Enjoy. All right. We talked about this on Friday when we did the breakdown of the league and the playoff race, and we got super geeky, and it turned out to be worthwhile. And if we look at, we said if the Warriors were to somehow lose their first 2 out of the break, which honestly I don't think I thought was possible, they had a 73% chance to beat the Spurs and a 64% chance to beat the Magic. So that went into our Warriors should win category. They lost them both. The Warriors only have 1 more game the rest of the way where their win possibility is over 60%. Everything else, the next 8 games are 60% or below. without Steph Curry. Now, maybe that was already calculated in, hard to tell. But this means the 3 seed is wide open. Now, we had projected the Warriors to win one of their should wins. I think 2 of their pick'ems for 3 and one of their for 4 more wins. Or we actually had them for 6 more wins. So we had them winning one of their should wins. 3 of their pick'ems, if you're looking on our screen, there were 5 of them. That's 40 to 60%. And one of their unlikelies for 5 wins the rest of the way. They are currently at 47. They're not 52 or 51 is where they're going to finish now. So 51 or 52 is going to get you a chance at the 3 seed. I had the Nuggets projected at 52, the Jazz and Dallas at 51. So far, in this early going, the Jazz have done exactly what they're supposed to do. They won their, had to win 86%, split their 2. Tonight's very unlikely to be a game changer if the Jazz win tonight. Game changer in the playoff race if the Jazz win tonight. Game changer if the Warriors win too. Dallas has done kind of exactly what we expected. They beat the Wolves in their 63%, lost their 2 others. Nuggets have done split the 2 and won the one they had to win. Minnesota's done exactly what we expected them to do. So there's the only real game changer right now is that the Warriors have opened up the 3 spot with their 2 losses to the Spurs and the Magic, and they just don't have play the Heat on a back-to-back tonight. I'd be surprised if Draymond or Clay plays. Then they play Atlanta. Then they got Washington, which that's a real must-win. Then they got the Grizzlies on a back end of a back-to-back. Again, I'd be surprised if Clay and Draymond play. Before they get Phoenix, they get us, the Kings, Lakers, Spurs, Pelicans. Spurs and Pelicans late in the season, I'm assuming they're both playing, but you never know. Maybe they get a gimme there. So tonight, you've really got the Mavericks playing a game they have to win. Minnesota would be a mammoth win for Minnesota. And this is where we've talked about the 7 seed gets in play if Minnesota wins 5 or their 7 or 4 of their 7, and they're 1 and 2 in that stretch. So this has kind of happened early. From a Jazz standpoint, my feeling the whole time has been, I don't know if I really care 3 through 6. I don't want you in 7 and you're not getting 1. I'm not sure it has a massive impact. So I think the fact is it's not what's relevant to the Jazz is not getting 7. We really need Minnesota to lose games. Though 3-6 gets interesting if Minnesota flies into that, right? If you could suddenly get Minnesota in the first round and Memphis in the second round, you're playing the 2 most inexperienced teams you could play on your way to assuming Phoenix or someone. If you go get Dallas and Denver, Dallas or Denver to slide into 7, I don't know that Denver has a lot of games left to lose, though. As I've said this whole time, I've thought Denver is going to surprise everyone and end up at 3. Golden State ends up at 4. Dallas ends up at 5 and 6 with us when we get into tiebreakers. And then, are we Denver in the first round? I don't hate that. We just have to do it on the road at altitude. Doesn't bother us. All right, that is Locked On Jazz today. Thanks very much for tuning in. Appreciate it. Ron and I will be with you postcast after the game, and I'll be back with you tomorrow morning here from Boston. Hope you have a great day. Thanks very much.